I remember all my like Hmong friends just like they went with like they had a Mika name they went with.
Right.
And I tried that once.
You're just like, it
and I was
doesn't
like,
suit
it was
me.
so bad. I was just like, hi, my name's Will. You know.
Like,
but what I do
Yeah.
is if I go to Starbucks or any of those places,
sure.
they're like, name please, and I'm always like, because
Bob.
one of my this is so funny, but one of my good friends, he's Chinese, and for a long time he went by Mike.
Yeah.
But then, eventually, as he got into, he's an adult and he got a little older, he's like, no, I'm really just want to reclaim that Ming
Yeah.
Jin. So he went, he's like, he just went with Ming Jin. And so he's back to that's his original name.
I would do that except for Zhao. It's like impossible.
Zhao.
Because
it'll be Zer.
Right.
Yeah. Or like my brother's Hmong.
Oh.
So it's K-O-B.
Hmong.
Yeah. So he didn't go by Kong, but he went by the Hmong spelling. So K-O-B-M-O-B. So it's just Koob, and then it'll be like Kubi. So he became Kubi because the teachers at school was like, it was like cute, adorable, like Kubi.
Got it.
So yeah. So like that's just kind of how it is. But
yeah, we could talk about names the whole time.
Like,
time.
Well, Mike. Mike went to Ming Jin, so I'm like, hey man, if you're not using Mike, can I use Mike for my coffee? So I'll use.
Absolutely.
So I did this the other day.
Absolutely.
No joke. I was going in, and they're like, oh, what's your name? I'm like, Mike, and they put a name, and then they put the drink down. And I was like, I think I was like working on my computer.
And you weren't
like,
paying attention.
No, and he kept saying Mike.
And you're like,
Mike.
And it didn't register.
And I'm like, Mike, get your drink. I'm like, oh, I'm Mike. And I walk out. One time I did that.
Yeah.
One time I did that. I remember this at Starbucks because there was a friend, she was sitting down. She's like, hey, I'm like, hey. And after I already put my drink down, and I was like, hi, I was talking to her, and someone said Mike, and I went up to grab the drink, and she looked at me like, liar. Like, is that your drink? And I'm like, shh, be cool. Yeah. Be cool. It is my drink. I just don't use, because sometimes they're like, yeah. And then sometimes they'll do the Y really quick. So it says via. So it'd be via.
Oh.
So yeah. So,
sure.
So Mike is just so much easier.
My husband does that when we travel.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask for his name. Just like, Bob.
Oh, yeah. I think I want to start changing it to Chad. Because I thought it'd be really funny. But yeah.
Names are fascinating.
Oh, I know. And then even sometimes it was just like my nephew. So my sister-in-law is Korean, but she was born and raised in China. So, and then my brother's Hmong. So my little nephew has like 4 names. So he has a Chinese name, a Korean name,
Sure,
a Hmong name, and then a Mika name. And then so it's like he's got like 4 names, because it's like they wanted to do. I'm like, that's not fair. I don't even have a middle name, and you have like 2 other names you're not ever gonna use. But anyways, so Sophia, thank you so much for coming on. We've interviewed before for our other podcasts, but thank you so much. I met you by reading an article about you actually through Star Trib. And then there was one like Pioneer Press, and I was just so taken back, and the word impressed doesn't even do it for me. Like I was just so like, wow, I'm so honored to, to hear about your story, where you come from, where you got to, and so I just want to jump right in. Like what? So give me your background. Like how did you guys get to this country? Where did you guys settle? All of that.
Well, first, thank you for having me back. It's always a treat to engage in any conversation with you. Yeah. And so I'm a Wisconsinite. Mm-hmm. Don't hold it against me.
No, me too. So
through and through, Packer fan.
Yeah, me too.
Except for when Vikings are playing.
No, I'm still Packer fan. Even though they had a rough season, I am. Yeah.
I will root for Vikings wherever I can as well.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is really just an hour and a half from the Twin Cities. And we were actually the second Hmong refugee family to resettle in that community.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. Back in 1978.
You guys were like the really first ones then.
It was my sister and her husband and her 2 children at the time. They were the first family. They were kind of like a pilot family to see how that transition would go.
Was it through a church or sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm just so fascinated.
No, you're absolutely right. It was through a Lutheran church. I'm going to give a shout out to Trinity Lutheran Church. It's also known as the Ski Slope Church in Eau Claire. They were willing to be courageous and took a risk and sponsored these two families, our family and my sister's family from halfway across the world and helped us to adjust to the community.
How was it? Because you guys were the only families there. Like, how long before the next family came?
You know, I think they started to slowly sprinkle in. But I can still recall by the time I graduated from good old Memorial High School.
One of my buddies from college went to high school there. Yeah.
Tell you how old I am. Yeah. I graduated in 1990, and even back then, I think I was.
Gulf War didn't happen yet. The first Gulf War, the first time we were in Iraq, it didn't happen yet.
You know, and I can still recall like being only one of maybe a dozen or so Hmong American kids in my entire school.
How did so one of the things that for me was, I read the book When the Spirit Catches You, and when you read that book, some people, the critique of the book is that it was very insensitive to Hmong people, but I thought about it this way, where I'm like, well, the people who were writing, like the person that was writing the book at that time and what they were talking about, it's like they had no context for who the Hmong people are, because it was like mid 70s or something like that, so it was just like there was no context, and they were still trying to understand like the Hmong culture, who the Hmong people are, and kind of being that first wave where it's like, I think they do this, these are the kinds of their traditions. I was just wondering, like, you guys were like one of the first Hmong families there. Like, how did you, I don't want to say assimilate, but like, how did you transition to, to all the, Western cultures and all of that, because like being that first, it's pretty difficult.
I think I had a very unusual experience. Our community really just gravitated to making sure that we would succeed. And so we had a built-in support system, not like a lot of the more later refugees who didn't have the benefit of a Mika friend, have a church community. So I had a built-in playmates. Our godparents, they made sure that we were able to have friendships immediately. And so we kind of had friends who looked out for us at school when we were picked on and when we were called chink. They stood up for us and they made sure that we had a voice.
That's amazing, because you don't hear about that a lot.
So as scary as it might have been looking back at it, we were so fortunate to arrive in this community where we felt just really welcomed and loved. And I just took it every opportunity to then arm myself with the resources to continue to move forward. And I've always been one of those people that I don't place friendships based on someone's race or ethnicity or the background. And so I was one of those kids that had friends in every social circle, just a true social butterfly in every sense of the word, so that I was able to become senior class president.
You're senior class president?
Homecoming queen.
Whoa.
Student.
I was homecoming king.
Yes.
Yes. Royalty here.
Real title, right?
Which, can I explain to you that when I was homecoming king and I came home and I explained to my parents I was homecoming king, so you have to understand, like Hmong parents, right? They're like, you're the king? And I remember the first thing my mom asked me, goes, does that mean you get to make new rules at the school? And I'm like, I don't think that's how it works, Mom. I got a $25 gift card as homecoming king. They give you a $25 gift card to Country Kitchen or something like that,
Yes. It was a great place to eat at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great value at that time. So I was gonna go, like, your high school experience was, it sounded really good. And then after that, did you go to college right away then after that?
I did. I went to University of Wisconsin at Madison.
Okay.
Big institution, 40,000 plus students. And that's kind of where I was then thrust into, there's a whole world outside of good old Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
I can't get any better than Eau Claire, Wisconsin. How was that for you leaving? Like leaving Eau Claire to go to Madison? I've talked to Gia many times about that, where she was talking about how her leaving home, that there was the worry that she's a Hmong woman leaving away from your family, going to school like that. There was concerns and stuff like that. And many friends of mine have expressed that, female friends Hmong friends who were saying, hey, my mom was concerned because I was going to college like 3 hours away. How was that for you?
I'm sure there were those concerns, but they never expressed doubt in me. I was very fortunate to be raised in a family that, even though it's patriarchal, which our society still is, there was value in education. And so we placed a high value in education, and it was really encouraged for both boys and girls. It was just, the message was, you better succeed though.
Yeah. Definitely. It's like, don't fail. Okay. How about you? I mean, was there a big Hmong community in Madison at that time when you went to college down there?
I want to say there were maybe like 50 of us, which was considered huge at that time. And now there's obviously a lot more. So that was 50 for all, freshman through senior year.
And you got a chance to connect with them when you went down there?
Yeah, we had a nice little niche of other fellow Hmong American students. There was, I think at that time, a very robust Hmong American Student Association. I was also very involved with our ASU, the Asian American Student Union.
Yeah.
And of course, my second home was the Multicultural Center.
Yeah. That's when I went to UW La Crosse. That was like the place where all the Hmong kids camped out and did homework and everything. Yeah.
Had access to a printer and a computer.
Yeah, so I went to college a little bit after you, and so you can have those in your rooms.
You can make fun of me. That's okay.
No, it was. I love Madison, by the way. I went to school at UW La Crosse, so Madison, like that was, man, I love that area. I was just there, a few weeks ago. We were just walking down by the Capitol area, eating at some of the restaurants down there. So I'm a huge fan of Madison, and like it's funny because I always talk about how, if you go to any of the UW schools, but no matter what, like you're a true like Badger fan. So like football, basketball, hockey, like I'm a Badger fan, just being from Wisconsin. So I love Madison.
They are diehard Badger fans through and through. Yeah.
So after you were done with school, was law school part of, your trajectory?
It was. I often joke that I am that Asian American who's really bad at math.
Yeah, I was horrible at math, and I think the kid next to me thought I was good because I was Asian, so he kept copying me, and I'm like, I'm copying the other kid, Yeah.
So I knew like being a CPA was out the door.
Yeah.
And I was also equally bad at science.
Oh yeah, so you're like, doctor's not gonna work.
So medical school was out the door.
Yeah.
But the truth was, I really just fell in love with and became really passionate about our United States Constitution. Studying civil rights law, studying about Martin Luther King and how he worked with the legal system to really change society for the better. All that was just really fascinating to me, and so I knew that law school was in my deck of cards.
So, was your undergrad pre-law then, or were you a poli-sci undergrad?
I was not a poli-sci, but I was a history major.
Okay, yeah, that was the other one too.
Yep.
Yep. A few of my friends that went to law school and then ended up being lawyer. They were the poli-sci, history, but we didn't have pre-law, so it was either poli-sci or history. So I was just wondering, how was law school for you?
I will say law school is one of those experiences where
I'm sorry, and law school was Madison, right? Did you do law school there?
No, I did it here in the Twin Cities.
Oh, Hamlin.
Yes,
I remember this. Okay, yeah.
And so, law school is one of those ordeals where it's super rigorous. And any graduate school program really is.
Yeah.
But law school, the way it's taught, I think they want to torture us.
I don't know how you lawyers do it because, I've been very blessed to work with different lawyers for contracts and stuff that we do, or just, legal stuff in our business and whatever. And when I get a contract and they go redline it and then they send me a bill, I'm just like, yeah, we'll pay it because I have no idea what you just did, but it benefited us, and even like I tried reading through some of the contract and I'm like, these words don't, like, I know they're English words and I know I'm forming sentences when I'm reading them, but like to me, it doesn't mean anything. And it would, like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But then like when I give it to our lawyer, for, you know, we have a company lawyer, I give it to him, and he's like, gets done. He goes, okay, so basically this is what this says. And I'm like, how did you get that out of that? I read the same thing you did. So I'm like, I give it to you, to the lawyers, you know, in that training and in that. And so, yeah, I mean, you were saying, sorry, I'm just fascinated.
Well, actually, I mean, you touch on something really important here, which is that I fundamentally believe that a good lawyer and a good judge, being in this role, to be effective and a good communicator means being able to break it down so that people can understand what you are trying to say or communicate to others, rather than using convoluted legalese. How do we break it down so that ordinary individuals can better understand what you're trying to communicate?
So, as we're just talking, like you went right from high school, college. After college, you knew you wanted to, be a lawyer, so you went to law school. I mean, it seems like there was like no breaks in between, right?
There was none, and I
know, and I'm tired just listening to that, and in a good way. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh my gosh, like you didn't like take a year off, or you didn't, go do this and say, hey, I'll hop back into law school. It was just boom, 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 right away.
It's kind of crazy looking back at it, but that's exactly what I did. And I grew up during a time where there was a lot of urgency to either be in school or to do something productive with your life. And this concept of taking a gap year just did not exist when I was growing up. But of course now, like, I encourage young people to take gap years wherever they can, so that you can, one, discover who you are and what you want to do, so that you don't waste time and money in college or in a graduate program that you're not going to really love.
Yeah. Did you right away know that this is like, like the legal system, this is where I want to go?
I absolutely knew that I wanted to be in the legal system. But in terms of, did I know I want to be a judge? Absolutely not.
So, when was that switch for you to say, hey, like I really love the law. I really love, learning about the Constitution and all that stuff. Like, when did that for you? Like, what was that switch for you?
Yeah, I have to say, law school itself did not do that for me.
Oh, props to Hamlin.
No, law school itself is very
Vigorous?
It's very rigorous, and it's just not fun. It does
not seem fun at all. My friends who are in law school, who came to law school, were just like, I'm done,
But the practice of law is fun. The practice of law is very rewarding. It's very fun. It's a great opportunity to help people, and that's when the switch happens. Is when you go, oh, I have this amazing tool. A doctorate of jurisprudence, or a JD as we call it, to be able to use that tool and to help shape people's lives, to help them improve their situation, or to be an advocate for someone. And that's what a lawyer does, right? They would advocate for a client. And to see that their law degree can help change people's lives for the better, that's when that switch comes on. And it's really exciting to see that.
So was that after law school?
Correct. Yep. Once you get your license as a lawyer and start practicing law.
So this is me. It's just fascinating because I love dissecting these things down. So for you, how long was law school? 3 years?
That's right. I did it in 3 years.
Is it normally 3 years? Is it 3 or 4 years?
It's 3 years, but some people go part-time, so you can stretch it out to 4 years.
While you were in law school, did you work as a paralegal? Did you do any of that, or you just school straight right through?
I decided I just wanted to finish school, and so I did not work anywhere else. Yeah.
You're kind of a nerd.
Super nerd. Before it was cool to say a nerd.
That's true. No. So after, what area did you figure out? Like, what area of law did you want to go to? What were you drawn to? I guess.
Sure. I always knew that I wanted to work in the public sector. So a lot of folks going through law school are motivated to make money, which is a good reason to go to law school too. I never was one of those people. I always knew that I absolutely wanted to work with the public sector and serve the people who live in our community. And so that would mean being a government employee or a government attorney. And so I've always stuck to that. I was a prosecutor early in my career. And then I switched hats and I also became an assistant public defender, which again is serving the poorest of the poor in our community.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. Like, it's kind of like opposite sides of the table, literally, right? Like, how was that switch? Or like, I mean, I don't know. Like, that to me is just fascinating. Like, you know, you started out as a prosecutor and then you go to the other table as a public defender. Like, how was that? Like, did you feel like you had to wear different hats, or like, how did that work?
You do kind of have to wear a different hat, because you're right. Their interests are very different. I mean, as a prosecutor, you don't have a client per se, but
The state is your client, right?
That's right. Yep. I mean, the state is who you are.
Oh, you represent. Or
advancing the interest of the state of Minnesota and the people who live in our state and public safety. So that's a big injustice, right? Prosecutors are mandated with one thing, which is to do justice. So it's very different prosecuting. And then when you become a defense attorney, all of a sudden you're one client, and that is the individual who's being charged of some criminal offense.
Yeah, a buddy of mine is a federal prosecutor, and it's always I'm always like, you're the real hero, you know. And I'm always like, you know, if we go, like, I ask him, hey, you want to grab drinks? He goes, oh, I got a big case. And I'm like, man, it's tough being a hero, man. You know, putting away bad guys. You know, and I always text him that. He's just like, no, seriously, I just got a case. And sometimes he'll be doing one of those like, yeah, man, it's a late one, so deadline's at midnight tonight. And I'm like, man, you're so cool. Like, I'm like, I want to be able to be like, I got a deadline at midnight, guys. I can't go out tonight, you know, which probably is not as cool as I make it sound to be. But like, for you, when you're in that process of law there, was there one side, I guess I'm just going to be very blunt, I don't know how to ask this, but was there one side, being a prosecutor or being a defender, that you liked more? Or was there one that you favored? No, I don't want to say favor, but do you know what I'm saying? Like,
that I enjoyed?
Yeah, that maybe? You enjoyed more, yeah.
You know, they're both really interesting, and they have the different goals, but ultimately, I like to think that whether one is a prosecutor or a defense attorney, you want to be able to do good work, and you want to be able to do work that you're proud of. And so when I was in those roles, ultimately, you know, you want to be able to do really good work. And so whether I was a prosecutor or as a defense attorney, that was my overarching concern, right? If I was prosecuting, am I doing justice? Because you can't just win at any cost. That's not what good prosecution is. And then as a defense attorney, you might be working with folks who are charged with some of the most serious offenses, but you have a duty to make sure that you are advancing their interest. You have a duty to make sure that you are representing them to representing your client to the fullest degree possible in terms of advancing their goals and their interests and in protecting their rights. And so they're both really fascinating in their own way.
Yeah, it's just always my views of, you know, especially trial lawyers and, you know, trial law has been ruined by TV and movies, where there's a bad guy, you know, and there's a good guy. There's like the noble, you know, defense attorney who's like, he's just trying to, you know, help these, you know, poor people from the system. And then there's like the mean prosecutor where all he cares about his wins. And I don't know. So I'm like, my views are all ruined from it. It's kind of like when people talk to me about like Top Chef or any of the cooking TV shows, they're like, oh, is it like that? I'm like, no, it's not. We just peel a lot of potatoes, you know. It's just, it's not as cool as they make it out to be. So you went from there to when was the process of becoming a judge? Like, how did that go?
So I never set out to be a judge. That was never in my deck of cards. One, I'd never seen another judge who looked like me, quite honestly. So I didn't even think that was possible. It really wasn't until about 10 years into practice as a lawyer. And I had this good family friend who was a former mayor of the city of St. Paul and is a former chief judge here in Ramsey County. He was just this really kind individual who happened to be, you know, Jewish American and happened to take a real strong interest in the Hmong American community as well. And so that's how I got to know him. He's the late Judge Larry Cohen. And it was through Judge Cohen in my friendship with him, and he planted the seed, and he said, Vuelo, you need to start thinking about being a judge someday. And at that time, I was just about 10 years into being a lawyer. And I said to myself, like, I was thinking to myself, oh, that's not possible. But he planted the seed, and I didn't think much of it at that time. And then a few years more went by. And after I was really comfortable in my role as a lawyer, then I started thinking about it, because I started seeing what he meant and what the late Judge Larry Cohen was trying to say to me was, there's a place for you at the table where we dispense justice, because our community needs to see people, needs to have people on the bench in our judiciary who reflect the people that live in our community, who understand the people that live in our community, and who can truly then take all that lived experience along with all of the legal and technical experience that I had accrued as a lawyer, taking all that to the bench so that you can make better decisions and continue to promote justice, continue to promote respect and trust of our legal system.
So when that started process, like, how does the process of going from, at that time you were a public defender at that time, right? Or
at that time I was a part-time public defender and had my own private practice.
Okay.
Yep.
So how does that process move? Is it like throw a name in the ballot, fill out an application? I mean, I just don't know. Like, is that how it goes, or?
You're partially right. Yeah. You fill out an application and you just throw your name in the hat.
Yeah. And then is it just you just wait until somebody gets a hold of you, or how does that work?
Yeah. So you have to wait till there's a vacancy.
Okay.
And so there are 29 judges here in Ramsey County.
Okay.
And when typically someone will retire, and then they might have like maybe a year or 2 years left of their term.
Okay.
So then, let's say John Doe retires this year, and there's a year left on John Doe's term. Then the governor and the Judicial Selection Committee, they vet candidates.
Who's in the Judicial Selection Committee?
Sure. Half of it is appointed by the Supreme Court of Minnesota. The other half are appointed by the governor.
Okay.
And then the Judicial Selection Commission vets the candidates. Everyone's open to apply. And then they will do a super technical interview. They vet you and make sure you have the qualifications, make sure you have the demeanor and the disposition. Do you have the judicial temperament? Will you be a good fit for this role? So they vet you and make sure you have all the technical goods and the skills. And then then they will forward 3 finalists to the governor. Okay. And they only forward people who are who have the technical goods and the skills to do this job, right? Because you first and foremost have to be qualified.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's like a number. Like, it's like any job, right? It's like, are you qualified? Yes. Okay, you can move on next. Yeah.
And so imagine going through a selection commission where you have to interview in front of your colleagues in the industry. Imagine 6 of the top-notch chefs in the Twin Cities interviewing you, and then forwarding your name onto the next selection process. Yeah. So then 3 finalists go on to the governor.
So the Judicial Committee, who are they made of? Like other judges or?
Not judges, but typically lawyers. Okay. And then there's also a spot or 2 for non-lawyers. Oh, okay. And we call those community members at large.
Okay. And you said there's 29 on the judicial. Sorry, how many on the Judicial Committee?
There's 29 judges.
Oh, sorry. 29 judges.
And then there's typically, I want to say when I went through it, I want to say there's like maybe 8 to 10 folks.
Okay, so they're the one who kind of goes to the application. They kind of filter it down to 3, and then the 3 goes to the governor. Yep. And then do you like go out to lunch with the governor and have an interview, or what? How does that work?
Yeah, we do sit down with the governor just like this, one-on-one.
No cameras.
No cameras.
Nothing recorded. No.
Governor Dane was sitting as close to me as where you're sitting right now. Yeah. I'd never met Governor Dane before. And so that was my first time when I went up to interview with him. It was at the Capitol. And as you alluded to, he's super personable. And you just feel like you're having a one-on-one conversation with him. And it hardly felt like an interview, but obviously I was being interviewed. Yeah.
So then that process goes through, and then is there a certain waiting period do you wait for, or how long was that for your experience?
So the word in the legal community was they kind of make a decision within 24 hours.
Oh, really?
After the interview. Yeah.
Dude, that's like
it's a really quick turnaround.
Yeah, because I would rather be like, okay, I got a month now, or something, then we'll just wait it out.
And word on the street also was that the governor himself likes to make that phone call and let the person know.
That is nerve-wracking.
And so I'm waiting.
Yeah.
I'm waiting, and I get the call, and I pick up the phone, and it wasn't the governor.
So, okay, I'm sorry. When the call came in, was it like on your cell phone where you could see who it was, or how?
Because I had interaction with his office before.
Okay.
I kept the number as the governor's office.
Oh.
So I knew it was them.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I picked up the phone, and it wasn't Governor Dane's voice, and my heart sank.
You're like,
I was like, oh, this is not happening. Yeah.
Yeah. It's.
But it turned out they extended me the appointment, and he just didn't have an opportunity to make the phone call himself.
I would be so mad at that. I'm like, there's a certain way of doing this. You guys can't do this to me. My heart can't take it.
It's kind of like, remember when you're applying for college and they said, if you get a thin envelope, that's a rejection.
Yeah. You're feeling it. You're like, I don't know.
But if you get a big envelope.
Like that's like the starter package.
Yes.
Yes. I know.
Mm.
I got one of those envelopes that said, we like you, but come do summer classes, then we'll see if you're in. So I'm like, that's like a half in,
Yeah.
And just on the record, I want to know, you are the first Hmong judge, right? Hmong judge that's appointed in a circuit judge appointed in Ramsey County, right? So, or did I say that wrong? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah. I was actually the first Hmong American judge here in the state.
Okay.
Yep. And then the second to be appointed in the country.
Yes. And so, I mean, that's huge, right? How does it feel to have like the first label? Like, how does that feel? Or do you feel pressure with that at all? Or, wearing that? Like, I don't know. Some people say that stuff about what we do, and I'm just like, I don't know. It's like, what's someone? Yeah. How did you feel about it?
So, because being a judge is a really it's a very unique role. Mm-hmm. We are judges for the entire state of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. I serve the people here in Ramsey County, and so to me, that is first and foremost my role. Is I'm a judge, I'm a neutral jurist, and I take that mandate very seriously to be professional, to be neutral, and to continuously promote faith in our judiciary. And so I think of myself first and foremost as a judge, and then I'm happen to be a judge of Hmong descent. And so that way my role as a judge actually takes precedence above everything else.
I really like the way, I think, we had like a pre-production call and you talked about that. And I've been always trying, in my own mind, always try to figure out like what I'm trying to do, and I'm also, but to be very frank, like I'm also one of those people who are like, sometimes people can get super eloquent and they're like, yeah, you're not just a cook, you're like a storyteller and an artist. And I'm just like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like I cook, But I remember we were talking about it and you were saying that you're like, first and foremost, like that's what I am. And I really love that, because like for me, what I am very passionate about first and foremost is like the artistry of cooking, and so like for me, I get so drawn into that. So it's even like these young cooks that cook with us, like the techniques they're using, like their knife cutting skills, like the way they're cooking things, the way they're searing, like it's like the artistry of food. Like I love that, regardless if we're doing it in this whatever ethnicities behind it. I love that, and because like sometimes it's always like, oh, if it's not Hmong food, then do you know how to do it? And I'm like, no, I'm first and foremost a cook. Like I know how to do that. Whatever food I know how to do because that's what I love. I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan of this world. So like when we were talking about that, you said that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that still makes so much sense. Like it was so super cool for me because like I felt like after we had done that conversation, that pre-production conversation, I feel like I can articulate it more now. And so that was just like, I clicked in my head like, yes, that's what it is. First and foremost, with you, we're saying first and foremost, you're a judge. My question is then, why do you love the law?
It goes back to just the very basics. Mm-hmm. It's about people. Mm-hmm. And so every case that comes before me, mm-hmm. I think about the lives. Mm-hmm. I think about the people mm-hmm. that I have to make this heavy decision on. Mm-hmm. And so I never think of it as really a case. Mm-hmm. They obviously have a court file number, mm-hmm. but to me, those are people's lives. And mm-hmm. so I always tell my law clerks who work with me side mm-hmm. by side in doing this work. I always tell my law clerks, we are not important people, mm-hmm. but the work that we do is important. Mm. And so it's about how do we help people? People come to us in crisis mode. Mm-hmm. They are, if it's the criminal courts, they've been charged of a criminal offense. Mm-hmm. How do we help them to navigate the criminal justice so that they can go from the beginning of the case to the end and feel that justice was done, mm-hmm. feel that they were treated well, mm-hmm. feel that there was an outcome that was that treated them with utmost respect, mm-hmm. and that adheres to our Minnesota Constitution mm-hmm. and the U.S. Constitution. During this pandemic, I presided over a lot of divorces, child custody, marital dissolution. Mm-hmm. So then those people are coming before the court during a different kind of crisis. Yeah. How do we help them dissolve their marriage, divide debts and assets, mm-hmm. and make sure that we help them craft dissolutions, mm-hmm. marital dissolutions in a way that helps strengthen families, help them to co-parent, help them to reduce conflict, mm-hmm. help them to equitably divide debts and assets, and how to carve parenting time schedules mm-hmm. when it comes to parenting custody issues. Yeah. And right now I'm on the civil commitment rotation mm-hmm. where I have to decide, am I going to commit someone due to mental illness or chemical dependency issues? And for what length of period of time? And I also see juvenile delinquency matters right now, where kids under the age of 18 who've been alleged to have committed mm-hmm. a crime are brought into our juvenile justice system. Mm-hmm. And so I'm constantly working with people mm-hmm. whose lives are coming before the court mm-hmm. when they are probably at their most vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And it's how we treat people. And you want people to walk away from the courts and be able to say, I was treated well, I was treated with respect, and that I believe in our court system mm-hmm. because that's what gives strength to our judiciary, mm-hmm. gives strength to our court system, is when people feel that they can trust the work that we do and have faith in the work that we do. Mm-hmm.
So I don't have this on the question, but it just popped in my head here. When somebody says to you, or when you hear somebody say, hey, our system's broken, how do you answer that? How do you, I'll be very frank, because it's like, I hear that a lot. Mm-hmm. when I became a citizen, right? A few years back, I became a citizen, American citizen. And one of my buddies, a Mika guy, said to me, why would you want to be a citizen of America, man? It really sucks right now. Like, why would you want to be an American citizen? And for me, the way that, it was one of these comments he wrote on I think Instagram or whatever, when I posted about being an American citizen. I think it's a well-meaning question. He wasn't coming at me. He wasn't mad. It was a friend. But what I really wanted to say to him, if we were going to sit down for a beer or something, and I was going to talk to him, what I really want to say was, because being a citizen to me in America is not about me. It's about my grandfather who fought for this country but never got in. It's about my uncles who fought for this country but never came here, wasn't a promise of freedom. It's for my father who fought for this country, came here, and then had to fight to get his citizenship. You know, it was for my mother, who believed that all her pain and suffering is worth it, because when we come to America and we raise our kids and we work hard to get them, that they'll have an opportunity. And for me to be like, oh yeah, thanks mom, like, but I'm gonna do my own thing now, I felt like in a good way I owe it to them, not in a burden way, you know what I'm saying? And so that's like, for me, that's how I answer people going, well, you know, why would you want to be a citizen of America right now? Because it's, you know, there's so much dissension, there's so much fighting, you know, why would you want to be? And to me, I'm like, that's how I would answer. And so I often hear people go, well, the system's broken, the system's messed up, the system's broken. How would you like answer that question? Or how would you, what's your, I guess, rebuttal, I guess is the word. Like, yeah, how would you dissect that?
I don't know where I got this from, but I've always known that you can't change our society and can't change the systems unless you are a part of them.
I love that, because I'm so glad you say that, because I firmly believe in that. Yes.
I mean, you don't have to agree with everything that the government does, but if you're not at that table where those discussions and those decisions are being had, then you can't be part of that change either. I'm not naive to think that I can change our entire legal system. I do not believe I can do that, and I know I can't do that. But I will play whatever small role I can to ensure that I'm doing justice every single day that I take the bench. And as long as I do my part, and I have done justice on that one case, and I multiply that by 360 plus days of the year, that's 360 opportunities that I have had to do justice. And that to me is what drives me, is to know that, you know, we are continuously trying to improve our systems. And while all part of that, our humanity is interwoven together. And so you can't be on the sidelines and just complain. Is America perfect? Absolutely not. That's, but I've been to China. Yeah.
Oh, can I just say that when people say that, and I'm like, you guys, like, have you been to Vietnam?
Yeah.
Like, have you been to some of these countries where it's like, even like writing something on paper and people seeing that, like, China, like, you know, like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I mean, but you're absolutely right. I mean, when I was in China as a college student, like, you couldn't even go from one district to another district without some sort of passport, some sort of, you know, authorization from the government. Imagine the United States if you couldn't travel from Minnesota to Wisconsin.
Yeah, and you had to get like a passport, and you had to, yeah.
And then as a female, I mean, I know firsthand that the trajectory of my life as a woman, if I had been born in Laos and stayed in Laos, I would never have had these opportunities that America has afforded me.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, you know, why you're saying that, I think about it's perspective, right? You know, it's perspective. And it's one of those things that I'm very like adamant about. And also I'm really open to, especially hearing things from my mom and dad's side, hearing things from my grandma's side, you know, and the things that they went through. You know, when you hear it and you hear it, and I'm not just like hearing it, but like you see it in their eyes and you hear it in the voice, you know, the pain, the suffering, the killing fields, you know, like the murder, the genocide. You hear that from them. And there's this way I've found out, there's this way of like Hmong Laona, the elders, and they speak. And it's also a tonal way of saying things, you know, where you can hear the suffering in it. And that's what I think I love about the Hmong language is like, oh, mo xie heng ah, you know what I'm saying?
Not just mo xie,
yeah,
mo xie.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, you know, like saying the word of like broken heart or suffering. Man, that tone, and every Hmong listener out there, Hmong kid out there, you know what I'm talking about. When grandma or mom says that tone about oh be ma zon Yesu na, you know that, oh my gosh, in that tone is the suffering. It's that tone there talks about the suffering. And when I hear my mom and dad speak about it, or even sometimes when my dad talks about it and he's like staring off, you know what I'm saying? You know, my dad's almost 70, he's 70 some years old, and he's staring off into space and he talks about that pain. It's just like in his mind, it like just replays in his head. And to me, that's perspective, you know, knowing that, man, like America's not perfect, but from where they came from, this is miles and miles away, you know, thousands and million miles away from where they came from. And that, I don't know, like that, the way that you talk about law and the way you're so passionate about law, that's the way I feel that same passion when it comes to saying, like, how do I represent their story? How do I tell their story? You know, where I'm like, anybody can fight me on it. You can talk whatever you want, trash about like whatever. But I'm like, no, you're not going to fight me on this. Like, I'll win this one all day, you know? And so, yeah, so I hear it in you. And I hear about your love of the law and, you know, why that's so important to you and so passionate. That's why I think that's why there's like for me, there's this kindred spirit with you where I'm like, I love being around people who have a passion for something and who love it, you know? And when I say that, it doesn't mean like, it doesn't have to be your job, you know, it could be whatever it is, but just have a passion for it. Like for you, like what would you say to some of our like some of these like younger Hmong kids who are growing up and they are doing maybe their gap year or whatever, like, you know, as somebody who's sat at the table, who's sitting at the table, as a mother, you know, like what would you say? What would you say to them where they're like in this gap year, like, well, you know, hey, I was born in America, everything's awesome, this is great, like, you know, I'm enjoying everything. Like, what would you say to them? What's your encourage to them? You know.
So, as a parent, I always tell my children, you don't have anyone to focus on but your own dreams and your own goals. Find a purpose in life and work hard to get there. I think young people these days are very fortunate. They are removed from the burden of having to care for their parents. So it's not like when I was growing up and I knew that I was responsible for not only for myself, but also to care for the elders in my family. Because they, of course, didn't have the education and the know-how and the resources to fend for themselves. But our children, the sky is the limit. And I always tell my kids, the world is your oyster. And work hard now so that you can have this good life that you're intended to have. And I work with a lot of young people in our juvenile court system.
Yeah, that's what you were saying that. You can see that over all of them. And I mean, that, like, does that do something for you when you see all these, you know, juveniles who come through? Like what, how does that resonate inside of you?
Every child that comes before me, I always look at them and I think, what if this was my child?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah.
I have a high schooler.
Yeah.
I see a lot of high school kids.
Yeah.
And especially coming from a Black and brown community where they are disproportionately represented in our juvenile court system, I'd like to think that because I come from that community, I have an insight into being able to connect with those kiddos. And I do take my time to speak with them.
That was what I was going to ask that. Like, do you ever get to directly just, you know, speak to them and say, hey, like, whatever the ruling is, like, I want you to hear from me, like, as a mother, or, you know, like, do you ever get a chance to do that?
I do, actually. Yeah. I really, really enjoy being in our juvenile court system. Teenagers are hard to crack. Oh, yeah.
They're not as, like, the outside looks tough, but they're not. They're just as, it's like, they're kind of like bears. They're more scared of you than you are of them. Just, you know, just curl up in the ball. They'll go away.
And I started doing this thing where if a juvenile comes in front of me, and they're kind of slumping. Then I start slumping with them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I see them like sitting up.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That looks really disrespectful. Then. Yeah. And it's.
Because we're always smarter than the teenagers. We're smarter than them. You just got to play on their level a little bit.
You really do. You got to disarm them.
You got to be like, what's up, dude?
And once in a while I've been like, hey, can I tell you a little secret? Yeah. I have a teenager too.
Yeah.
So I know a little something about teenagers.
Yeah. I'm raising one also. Yeah. I'm not new to this game.
And I really do. I break it down for them. I try to convey to them like, hey, I'm here because I care about the outcome of this case, but I also care about you. I want you to be able to go move from this so that you can enter your adulthood years with the best footing in life and be a productive, independent, autonomous individual, and lead a good life that you deserve. And that's my message to every young person that I come in contact with.
Do you ever hear back from any of them, or do you know if any of them ever reach back and say, hey, like this changed my life, this, something there, it hit me? Have you ever had any of that?
I haven't yet, only because I haven't done juvenile delinquency long enough.
Okay.
But I have had young folks that they will tell me, and they'll say, this is the first time that an adult has asked me what I need help with. And so I really appreciate those moments when a young person communicates that to me.
That's so cool. Yeah. I mean, just from talking with you now and also knowing you, but just talking to you now is like, to me, this gives me a lot of hope in our judicial system. Like personally knowing somebody who's in it and says, I do really care about this. This isn't just a job or a paycheck. Like I do really care about this. And I hope like people listening in, like they can hear that. And I know they can hear that from you, and so I don't know. Like I'm kind of like, I'm like just dumbfounded. I'm like, man, this is so awesome. For you, like what, like I love us to move more to like the Hmong people. Like what's your hope for our younger I always say younger generation, but I like when I say that, I just think of like my nieces and nephew, that Gen Z group or whatever. Like what's your hope for them?
I want every young person growing up in this society of ours, this community of ours, to know and to feel that they can achieve whatever dream they desire, and that they belong in every space that they want to work in or want to be a part of. Because I hear from a lot of young people, they tell me things like, I don't feel like I belong in this space. Even Michelle Obama talks about that. And how she didn't always feel like she belonged in certain spaces. And she is Michelle Obama.
I feel like I belong in this White House that I live in.
Or that people made her feel like she didn't belong, right? And so I want every young person to know that you are, I love this poem. It's called Invictus. Invictus is this powerful poem written about how you are the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. And so that is the one message I want every young person to know is you are the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. So in other words, you control your own destiny. Just work hard to get it, what the outcome that you want, the dream that you want to achieve.
Yeah, I think like one of these aha moments I had was my mom. We were doing a TV interview. My mom was talking something about how I think the interviewer asked my mom and dad, like, like what was your dream of America? And my mom said, she was like, I don't understand what you mean dream of America. She's like, we were just surviving. We didn't have time to dream. And, it's like, she's like, we were, she said, I will never forget when she said that. She goes, I didn't know peacetime. Because when we were born, I was born in a war. And she's like, we wasn't until in the camps where we realized like, oh, we're in a war. Like we just thought this was life. And it dawned upon me that like for my parents and for a lot of the refugees, like they like war came to their doorsteps, and that determined their destiny was already written in war. Saying this is just what it's going to be. Like, you know, like survive, die, live, whatever. Like, this is what it's going to be. And it wasn't until our generation where I think like my parents and them had hope, where they're like, you can be anywhere. Like exactly what you just said. What do you desire to be? You want to be an artist? You can do that. You want to do this? You can do that. But I think that we were the first generation where they're like, be something that's like successful, have money and security. Like they don't, because that's what made sense, right? But like when I went to school and I told my parents that I'm majoring in communication, they were like, what? Don't you already know how to talk?
You don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer?
Exactly. You know, or even I told my parents that like I really love to cook. Like I'm like, Mom, I'm like, I remember I said like, Mom, Dad, I'm actually good at this. Like this is something that I'm good at.
How did they respond to you?
My dad said this, and in the most loving way. I remember my dad goes, we didn't come to America and work hard and bake. He said, you know, in Hmong, like, you know, like basically said, I didn't come here to break my back and wear out my hands so that you could break your back and wear out your hands working on your feet late at night. I didn't do that. Like, and he said, I came here so that you could sit in a corner office and sign other people's checks for them. Like, you know, being their boss. That's what I want for you. And like, I get super emotional because like my dad always said like, you know, it's like, I'm dumb. I don't know any of this stuff. So let me break my body so you don't have to. And I was like, always so mad where I'm like, Dad, like, why can't you see that this is what I want to do? And my father's a carpenter, right? So his hands are always like cut up and, you know, and I remember as a kid, he would hug us and we'd be like, oh, like, you know, it would like scratch us. Like his hand was very hard. And I think it wasn't like, it was like 6-7 years ago. I remember I got done cooking this. I was grilling at this event. I got done cooking. I looked at my hands and it was all cut up. And I loved it because they were my father's hands. And I still hear him saying in my head, and he's saying to me, like, I don't want you to hurt yourself because I get to hurt myself so you don't have to. And I realized, like, man, like when you're saying that, where like you're saying that the world is your oyster and that's, you know, you can do whatever you want. It's like, I feel like you're talking to me, and I feel like it's like my dad talking to me, going like, we broke ourselves, our generation, you know, their generation, they broke themselves. They left a part of them in Laos so that we can come here and dream big. And I remember my mom said, you know, she said, your dad finally, in 88, your dad finally said, we're going to come to America because, you know, he kept helping with the resistance, right? And Dad said, we're coming to America. And then my dad said to my mom said, you know, your sister wasn't born yet, but he looked at me and he said, I want to go to a country, I want to go to a place where my sons can be free. And they get to, what did he say? He said, so they get to control their destiny.
Yes.
And I don't know, like, I'm like really proud of you. You don't need to hear that from me, but I'm really proud of you because that's what you did. And you're setting that standard for, you know, all of us, you know, younger people, like all the younger brothers and sisters that are following after you. And that's why, like, when I remember when I read the first article about you and all your accomplishments, like that's all I thought about. I was like, yes, this is it. This is what our parents warred for. This is what our grandparents, that's what my grandfather died for, you know, to have a place at the table, to work hard and then have, you know, like you were saying, have that, you know, the judge, you know, look at you and say, hey, you come here. Like, you should put your name in that, you know, put your name in the hat. And then to take that mantle and be serious, but be proud of who you are and sitting on, you know, on that mantle too. Like, I don't know, couldn't ask for anything more. So like for me, like, that's why it's always like such an honor, Your Honor. See what I did there? To just have you in the same space and just to be able to talk to you, you know, and then hang out a little bit. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say, but like, that's why I want people to hear your story. I want people to get to know you, get to know what you do, get to know why you're such a protector, defender of the law, and why is the law important to you, you know? And so I feel like, I don't know, that's kind of my whole wrap up of everything. Yeah. What, like, I don't know, I guess the thing I think about right now, the only question I really have is what's the next, what do you think the next step of your career or that you want to have or be, sorry?
Yeah. First, I want to say thank you, for opening yourself up and sharing your very personal story with not just me, but your audience too. You've done exactly what I hope every young person growing up in this country who comes from a refugee or immigrant background, or every young American for that matter, what I hope they can do, which is to really just seize every opportunity that's been thrusted their way and to magnify their talent 1,000-fold over. Take every challenge you've endured, take every hardship that you've had to face, take every disadvantage that you have encountered and turn it into an asset. And I know it doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes. How do you take a disadvantage and turn it into an asset? And so, for example, I, as a child, like, I openly share. I was that kid who was very deep, and I was deeply embarrassed to be that child who got free lunch.
Yes, I know that feeling. Other kids made fun of you.
Yes.
Oh, I know. I hated that. Oh.
But
kids are mean. Can we just say kids are mean?
They can be, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also that kid who lived in the projects, the housing projects, and grew up understanding, like really understanding and experiencing poverty. And how have I utilized that disadvantage of being from a socioeconomic disadvantaged background? How have I used that and turned it into an asset? Well, this is how it has become an asset or an advantage to me. I'm probably one of the very few judges here in our entire state of Minnesota. There's 300 of us. I'm probably one of the very few judges who's ever lived in the projects. I'm probably one of the few folks who have received that free lunch. And so when I work with people coming through our court system who are unfortunately primarily poor folks, right? Low income, indigent, whether it's our housing system, our housing court, whether it's our criminal justice system, whether it's our juvenile delinquency or our civil commitment court, it's primarily low indigent folks. Who is better to understand that place of poverty and disadvantage in life but a jurist like myself who has lived through poverty and overcome it, right? So like poverty is it's not some intellectual exercise for me. It's not something that's just something theoretical, some pie in the sky discussion or something that you read in the books.
Yeah.
It's very real.
Because you've been in it.
I've been in it. So I can better relate to folks. So learn how to use your disadvantage and turn it into an advantage or turn it into an asset somehow. So that's one takeaway. Yeah.
I love that. It goes along the lines of our vision and mission of our company, Hill Tribe, where we talk about how can a bunch of refugees create refuge for all. Like imagine that. Like we would have told our parents that one day as refugees, we get to help to create a place of refuge for all. You know,
I love that,
and so that's our vision and our mission. Where in the food industry, it's a tough industry, right? And so I always talk about, and we as a company talk about a place for the broken to help welcome all, so all can welcome the broken. So,
yes, and so that's kind of what I'm doing with our judiciary, right?
Yeah, I know exactly. Like the moment you're saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're talking about our vision and our mission of our company, and that's why we always say we got to be more than restaurant, we got to be more than food,
right? And so my vision it aligns with how do we constantly work to ensure that everybody, not just a select few in our community, but that everybody in our community feels that they can trust our legal system and that they can have faith in going through the process, so that ultimately they can respect whatever decision is made, right? Because our legal system is only as strong as the people who believe in it. And so, there are a lot of folks going through our court system, our legal system, who feel like the legal system only favors the rich, the corporations, and
people who have money to hire lawyers.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so, I mean, as a judge, I mean, I work extraordinarily hard to make sure pro se litigants feel respected along the way, feel that they're not being railroaded. And so, yeah, it's about being inclusive about everyone. And I'll share this story with you. I was talking with a young person, a young man who's now probably in his, I want to say 40s. I had met him at an event, and then we had a Zoom coffee, and he shared with me that he actually had gone through our juvenile justice system when he was younger, and he felt really dismissed. He felt really like just railroaded by our juvenile justice system. And then he grew up to be an adult, and he went to prison for other things. And then he's obviously come out of the prison system and is a very productive adult now. But he said to me, Judge Vuelo, what I appreciate about you is you see the humanity in everyone. And that is what I try to do every single day. I bring that to my work. It's to see the humanity in all the people that come before me. And so like you trying to create an inclusive place of refuge, I'm trying to create an inclusive place in our legal system.
It's amazing how we are in different sectors, but as these two immigrant refugee kids, we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to create a tribe, that welcomes all in.
Yes.
And so, Judge Sophia, thank you so much. And by the way, we were talking before, Sophia is not your
birth name.
Did you give that to yourself? Oh, you changed it, right?
I did.
What was your birth name?
So I have to share this first, though. Okay. I'm one of those sticklers. Like, if you are going to say my Hmong name, you have to say it correctly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, don't butcher it.
Yeah.
And don't call me something else. And so I was given this beautiful Hmong name, Zha. And that's because I am the last daughter.
Yeah. So it means
Gonza,
which is the youngest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or I like to think the most cherished.
Yeah, whatever. Don't pat yourself on the back there, Judge. And a lot of times the English iteration is Zer, right? So it's Zer.
Or Za.
Yeah.
Which is what I was called all my life.
Yeah.
And it just didn't resonate with me.
Yeah. And then you changed it. And was it college? What were you saying? Or college?
Right after college.
Oh, right after college.
When I knew I was going to apply to law school.
Okay. How'd you come up with Sophia?
I didn't want a common name. I won't say any names just because then someone out there might feel bad if they have that name.
Like, it's like today, like the name Karen is totally different now. I have a few Karen friends and I'm like, I don't think they mean you. You're really sweet. Yeah. Was such a hard one because it's like in Hmong, it's a frying pan, like Luyana. And so I got made fun of by, my Hmong friends. In English, they would just have trouble butchering it. So when you become a citizen, you're allowed to, change your name or pick your name, right? And my college friends always said, dude, we have to put up a vote. Like, can we just do a vote where it's like top 10 names or top 5 names, and then we put it on Facebook or social media, and people can vote on what name you're gonna have, that you can change to when you become a citizen. And I'm like, no, I just want like Todd or Chad, real easy to write on a coffee cup, Yeah, that's all I really wanted. But like the moment the case officer was like, would you like to change your name? And I'm like, I almost was like, yeah! And I'm like, I can't do it without my parents not like being like, why did you do this? So I chickened out right in the last half second.
Well, I'm glad you stuck it with
I know.
It suits you.
I know. I was like, well, it'd be cool to be called like, just to have a cool like superhero name or something. Captain America, like, Yeah.
I don't know if you have time to share with your audience how your kindergarten teacher butchered your name.
Oh, yeah. So we were talking about this too. And when I was growing up as a kid, we moved out east, and we were living in Pennsylvania area, and I was a first grader. And when you go and when you come in, and right away, like I was the only one. So I was the only one where it's like, it's like they'll look around, they look at the name, and they look up, and it's like, oh, like the strange name is like the Asian kid, because it was just, so he come up, and she came up to me, she goes, hey little buddy, what's your name? And I said, yeah. And I was like, real quiet. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, yeah. And I said, yeah. And she thought I said yes. So I didn't have the heart to tell him that my name was yeah, not ya. So from first grade all the way to 8th grade, it was ya. Like every year, I just went to the next class, like, oh, yeah. And all my friends were with me, like, oh. And then when we moved back to Wisconsin, I was like, I am going to reclaim my name. So I went around, they're like, how do you say your name? I'm like, it's yeah. Yeah, like Kia with the Y,
I love it. I love it.
I know. It took me a while.
When I was a young lawyer, I appeared in front of this judge who happened to be Hispanic, and VUELO is actually a Spanish word, and it means flight in Spanish, and it's pronounced.
Why is this lawyer always running?
Yeah. So it means vuelo. It's pronounced vuelo in Spanish, and I let this judge call me Miss Vuelo when I was a lawyer for a whole year.
Did he just think that you were like of Spanish descent, or like your husband was Spanish, or like or Mexican, or or Spanish, or what?
I do not know, but
he didn't like look at you and goes, well, she's Asian, but why does she have a Spanish last name?
But to your story, like, we have to be courageous. Yeah. I was scared to death to correct a judge when I was a lawyer.
And how were you a pretty new lawyer at this time, or?
I was maybe already like 5 or 10 years in, but I was still very timid to correct a judge because you just don't do that.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Exactly. But I finally did correct him, and he thanked me.
Oh, okay.
He thanked me for correcting him, and now as a judge myself, I always ask people, how do you say your name?
Yeah.
I want to get it right.
And I always we do that a lot with like with TV stuff. Like producers always come and walk me through, So for example, and this is kind of like a behind the scenes story. When you're saying this, it stuck out with me. Like when we were on Iron Chef, Mark Dukakis, he's shaved head, he's actor, he's the chairman, right? I don't know if you've ever watched the show, but he's a big action star actor. So Mark comes up, right, and I'm like a big fanboy. Like I was a kid growing up watching all his martial arts movies and stuff like that. And he's on like the John Wick movie, and he's like a big actor, right? So he comes up to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's him. Like I'm like, oh man. And he goes, hi, yeah. Now how do you say it? Is it Hmong or is it Hmong? Or and he literally, we spent like 10 minutes me saying Hmong, and he would like write it out on his sheet so he could say the word Hmong right. And then he goes, and now it's Vang, right? Is it Vong or Vang? And
wow.
Like he made sure that he said yeah Vang, like Chef yeah Vang, Hmong, and I was just like, he spent like 5 minutes with me, like just caring for that. And he was the sweetest dude ever. And after the show, he DM me, he goes, it was so nice having you on the show. Thank you so much. And I'm freaking out. I'm telling all my friends, I'm like, dude, we watched this guy growing up in every action movie there was. And, he was so cool. And that I felt so appreciated, I remember when he came up and he just like talked me through, like, help me pronounce this.
And that's part of how we as individuals, right, regardless of who we are, we can create a space that's inclusive of everyone by making sure we say their names right, by including them, by talking with them in a way that shows respect and recognition of who they are. So I'm really glad to hear that story.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
Well, Judge Sophia, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for talking us through and sharing, part of your life with us.
You are very welcome.